Let the anticipation build, let the thrilling elements build, and then when you pay it off, it'll feel better later. I think a lot of younger writers, newer writers, will focus on one thing. I don't get deterred real easy, so if I don't place in a contest, it's like, well, that door didn't open, but we're not gonna stop. We're gonna keep going.
Hot Seat is currently the #2 movie on Amazon's Freevee. #1 is Den of Thieves, I believe.
Okay.
With Hot Seat being #2, did you believe this could happen?
I did not. I did not. I know, when my co-writer and I came up with the concept, we thought it had a lot of potential and would be a lot of fun. But no, I actually didn't know that. That's very cool. That's very awesome. Yeah, I think it's a really fresh movie, and I know a lot of people really enjoy it.
And is Hot Seat the first feature script you've ever written?
Hot Seat was the first feature script that I got produced. I had written several before, but that was the one that finally got made as a feature film.
Were you hired to write Hot Seat as a spec, or you came up with it?
No, me and my co-writer, we are always kind of cooking up with new action ideas, and we wanted to do something really kind of contained, really fun, and we were basically like, speed in a chair would be very fun. And so we came up with the concept, we wrote the script on our own, and then we were pitching it around, and yeah, we got some interest on it, and they optioned it, and I think about a year later they went into production with it. So it was a pretty quick process from option to production.
And when you and your co-writer meet, because this is not your first project, I think, that you've written on?
Yeah, we write individually now, but for a while we were working as a writing team.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Would you meet and kind of like discuss, let's say, like a news story and say, this would be cool if we added this twist to it?
Yeah, I think it was always kind of working on a current project, and then we'd go grab lunch, and we'd always just be kind of spitballing ideas. I remember vividly us coming up with this when we were just grabbing tacos and just talking about, like, what can we do that is literally like one room? And we're like, okay, let's put a bomb in a room. What does that look like? Okay, well, maybe it's under a guy's chair. And we were talking about Speed. We like that movie like that that's got this literal ticking time bomb. So yeah, we are always just kind of spitballing concepts back and forth, either something we've written, like either doing notes on that or talking about something new. So we kind of work on rewriting, also something new, and then also something down the road.
And how did you get Mel Gibson attached?
That was through the production company, Emmett Furla. I think they had a relationship with Mel on some of their other films, and they brought him on board. And we got some feedback to kind of pump up one of the characters that he might be interested in. So we expanded the character a little bit, and then he read it, and I loved it and signed on, and the movie was pretty quick moving from there.
And so they gave you feedback like, hey, we like this character, but we need him bigger? Or?
Yeah, it was based because Mel's character is he's a cop in the film. He's like a kind of a secondary character. He's not the guy in the chair. And we had these two cop characters throughout the script that would kind of pop in back and forth to kind of take us out of the room. And they were basically like, can we bump this up to about 20 to 25 pages of screen time? So we kind of added a couple scenes, expanded some things, and added to that character role to make it a little bit juicier.
And the main character, that is a person did that character need bumping up or embellishing?
The Kevin Dillon character, we tweaked like the character's backstory a little bit, but for his character, it was pretty constant throughout. A lot of the script was figuring out like a lot of the mechanics of the action, how we were going to keep things moving, because it's basically in front of a computer screen. So figuring out ways to just keep that fresh and not bore the reader and bore the audience, that was a big thing. But the main character, it pretty much stayed the same. It was really just developing the family aspect of that character. Yeah.
Were there elements of Die Hard in the film?
Oh yeah, I think I'm a big Die Hard fan. I know my old co-writer Leon, he's a big Die Hard fan, so I think that's a big influence for us action-wise. we love all kinds of action movies. You mentioned Den of Thieves on there. That was another fun movie I enjoyed a lot. But yeah, there's definitely some Die Hard in there. We really tried to have a lot of fun with the villain, who's who's basically a caller on the film for most of the movie, and just trying to have fun with his dialogue. That was definitely a thing where it was like, is he becoming too movie villainy? Do we need to lower that down a little bit? So I think I was trying to find a right balance of that and make sure it's still, the character was still kind of hidden from the audience.
That's interesting. Did you make him more human, even though you couldn't totally see him because he had like sort of
I think it was just trying to make sure they weren't too, arch nemesis, and making them more human, giving them their own wounds as the villain, I think is important for all movies. And then, when there's the confrontation between the hero and him at the end of the film, it really resonates a lot stronger now, I think, after our rewrites.
I'm hoping we can go back a little bit before you pitched this script. So how much writing had you done previously? I know you've entered a lot of screenplay contests.
Yeah, I'd had some success with screenplay contests. I had produced a few shorts. I had a few shorts do pretty well in festivals, but as far as like feature scripts, I'd probably written maybe 4 or 5 or 6 before this. So several, but and they got to various different stages of development. Some of them optioned, some of them got traction, but probably 5 or 6 before Hot Seat. So I've been writing for definitely a few years before Hot Seat.
And do you feel that when you have a partner to pitch with you or to be sort of in the trenches with you, you have more confidence, or is it a hindrance in some way?
I think it's confidence. Yeah, I think it's I think working with a writing partner it's an art form on its own sometimes. But I think just as far as having somebody in the room just to spitball ideas with you, to kind of go back and forth, and then also if you're meeting with an executive or a director, just to kind of have somebody to riff off of, or they will have a take that you did not think of whatsoever, and just kind of bring a fresh, different perspective to things. So I think that's one of the big benefits of having a writing partner.
And now, how did you get inroads to this production company?
We actually used we used a website called Virtual Pitch Fest, where they have like a list of executives, and you just kind of send out your log line. You send out like a little bit of a query letter, and they were interested in it, requested the script. And I think probably a year and a half later, we got it into production.
So they let you know, and then that long amount of time passed, a year and a half?
Yeah, so they liked the script a lot. They optioned it, and then they, we didn't chat with them for a while, and then they had a couple rounds of notes, just kind of pumping up some of the action, working on some of the logistics of, the chairs and kind of a perimeter that he can't move out of, or the chair will explode. So figuring out those type of things, and then they said, hey, we might have a couple big actors we want to go out to for one of the side characters. Can you guys beef up one of those roles? So that was kind of the big note, was just expanding some of the roles. And once we got that, went into production, and wasn't a lot of changes from our draft than what went into production.
So it sounds like it was hurry up and wait for a while, and then hurry up and go.
Yeah, I mean, I think that at least from my experience, that's what I always find with film projects. It seems like you might not hear something for a year, and then it's like, okay, we got all these notes, we got somebody interested, let's do this. Can we get it next week? Can we get it in 2 weeks? And then from there, they'll get it to somebody to read, and things can really ramp up quickly from there.
And during the production, were you changing pages?
We were actually not on set for production. We weren't doing much then, but they kept a pretty fast-paced, tight shooting schedule, I believe, for this. So I don't think there were a ton of changes they made. There's some small changes throughout that we noticed, which were probably logistics things during production. But overall, most of the groundwork was done right before they went into production.
And so while the film was in production, were you and your partner, or you by yourself, thinking like, okay, this is how it works, I can do another, and I'm going to keep going?
As far as screenplay, I think it gave us both a lot of confidence, and got us excited, that we have this thing under our belt. It's got some great actors, it's got a great director, and people can see it. So I think it gave us a lot of confidence to like keep going. Things can get made, because we had a lot of projects that were, reaching a certain point, and for whatever reason not getting to the finish line of getting produced. So I think having Hot Seat was definitely a big boost for both of us.
What has writing the script of Hot Seat taught you about the film industry?
Wow. I think with Hot Seat, I think it's if you can come up with a really fun, great concept that can be shot in limited locations. I think that opens up a lot of doors for a screenplay. That was kind of what our thought was in writing it. Was like, let's figure out something that can be made for not a ton of money, that can be made with not a huge cast, but can still be high concept enough that make people hear the story, hear the concept story, and be like, oh, I want to see that. I want to go see that movie. That sounds fun. I want to rent that. So I think it was that, just starting out with the concept for Hot Seat was the king. And my old co-writer and I we were always very, concept driven as far as when we come up with story ideas. It was always like, what would something we'd want to go see on a Friday night? What would kind of be have the potential to be a big potential blockbuster, or something kind of fresh that people haven't seen before. And as far as teaching about the film industry, I think it was just like, it just takes a lot of things to happen correctly to get a film into production, and just learning about all those different steps, working on the rewrite, working on all those processes taught us a lot.
Have you watched the film with an audience?
We had a small viewing party, so that's really been the only audience I've watched it with, and everybody seemed to have a lot of fun. Yeah.
That's cool. And so, how is that watching? Whether it's family and friends?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a couple movies now where it's like it's screening in a big theater. For me, it's nerve-wracking. It's nerve-wracking. But it's also fun. It's the culmination of a lot of work. So I think it's like appreciating all that. But I think it's a little nerve-wracking hearing your stuff on screen, hoping people are enjoying it, hoping the crowd's enjoying it. But yeah, it's nice to see it on the big screen.
Collin, when you're starting a new project, do you start with an idea? Do you start with a theme, a character?
For me, I find a lot of the times it is the concept and the big kind of story elements. I know a lot of people, it'll be a character that speaks to them and they kind of expand from there. For me, it's always starting with a concept and building my way out from there. If I can try to come up with something high concept or blending genres together or making a spin on something that was maybe popular a long time ago, figuring out a new way into that story. I really enjoy contained films, whether it's it's buried where it's a guy in a coffin for the whole movie, or something where a guy is in a car for the whole movie. I always think it's fun, and it's kind of a troubleshooting way of, can we take a location or somewhere no one's seen before or not seen this way and turn in a new direction? That's the fun and that's the challenge of it. And from there, I think it's figuring out the characters, it's figuring out the emotional journeys, it's figuring out what makes a good foil to them as the antagonist. But yeah, with the process, I start with concepts.
And is action something that you want to continue doing? Would you ever write a rom-com?
I have not written a rom-com. I think there's a little bit of comedy in all my stuff. In some scenes, I mean, Hot Seat's a fun concept. There's some fun in there. I love writing action. I feel like I try to make genre films and genre stories with a heart. So I love thriller movies. I've always been, since I was a little kid, probably watching horror movies from way too young of age. So I've been a big horror movie fan. But yeah, I love action. I mean, I went to school for history, so I've written a couple historic scripts. I had a Western film, so I've written pretty much everything except for like a straight comedy. But I'd say the genre stuff, thrillers, action, horrors, kind of my lane.
And what's the art to weaving in comedy in something where the stakes are high in an action film?
I think it's nice to have levity, and I think it's nice to have a break from the tension. We'll throw characters in these very high stress situations, but I think if you can have banter between your main characters, just with Hot Seat and mentioning speed, just the relationship with Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock is so much fun, and back and forth between them. that even though they're in this insane situation, there is some levity to keep the audience a little bit loose. So I think if you keep the tension up too high for too long, it kind of loses the effect. So I think with anything, you can splice in a little bit of comedy.
How much detail do you put into your outlines?
When I started out as a screenwriter, I would say not enough detail. And I would do what a lot of, I think, early writers do. And some people can do this. Some people can pull this off. I can't anymore, which is you kind of get a nugget of an idea or you get something that really excites you and you just dive in. And I could always get about 30, 40 pages in of just kind of plowing forward. And then I would kind of reach a point where I was like, need to recalibrate, need to figure out where this is really going and kind of have to go backwards and then kind of re-put it together from the outline form. So I think I've gotten a lot better about doing more detailed outlines, really knowing where the story is going from beginning to end with an outline. And once you start, it's like a car, driving. I mean, you'll take a turn and then you'll go with that and you'll follow that for a while. So I'm not super married to the outlines, but from when I started to now, I definitely put a lot more work into it. And getting feedback from my writing group on the outline is important, just to kind of get another POV on if things are working or not, because that is the structure of your film, is your outline.
Do you write with a specific audience in mind?
I don't necessarily. I try to write things that I would go see, whether it's something scary and fresh or, like an action film. So I think I'm writing for those audiences who love fun genre films, who love to be scared or love a crazy action scene or love a good contained thriller. I think that's the kind of audience that I'm writing for.
Can you describe the moment when you feel the screenplay is done?
I can try my best. I used to have, you can want it to be as perfect as possible. And, I think most writers have a sense of perfectionism to them, for better and for worse. So I think there was a time where I would not send things out because I didn't feel like it was ready or I didn't feel like it was perfect enough. And then it got to a place where you got to accept that it's never going to be perfect. But I think when you feel like it's done and you're ready to send out, for me, my process is I have a pretty good writing group that I get feedback from. So when I feel like I can nail those notes, I have a good little circle of people in the industry that I'll send the script out to, get their feedback, whether it's it's my manager, it's one of my writing friends. Get those notes, get that feedback, and then kind of rewrite the script and get it to a good place there. And when I feel like I've kind of checked off a lot of those boxes of other people's just general feedback on the story, I feel like it's probably okay to start sending it out and sharing it. And I think also accepting that the process, until the movie is made, it's always going to be in flux. There's always going to be feedback, whether it's a producer, a director, an actor, everywhere down the line, someone's going to have some sort of feedback. And the script is kind of a living document that is going to change. So I think feeling like when I'm confident in it, when I'm happy with the product, I'll send it out. But also remembering the first draft or the early drafts, it's kind of like it's your story, and then you're going to send it out to other people, and it's still your story, but it's going to become other people's stories, how they interpret it, their view is going to change on it. So I think a big thing with me is not being incredibly precious with certain things, which I notice a lot of writers have that. I mean, I think it's obviously important to stick to your guns on a script, to really, really be committed to your concept, to your characters and everything. But for me, it's not being too precious with everything. It's being open to feedback. I think it's really important.
And just out of curiosity, how long after you had arrived in Los Angeles were you part of a writing group?
I moved out to Los Angeles. I did some classes over at UCLA. I did some classes at USC, and then I did some classes for a while at UCLA Extension. So before I got into a really good writing group, it was probably a couple years. And I think writing groups are kind of trial and error too. You'll run into some good ones where people really connect, and then you might be in one where people don't give a lot of great feedback, or the feedback is a little negative. And that's also another thing you just have to be worried about, getting notes is something I think getting notes is a skill in itself. And I think that being confident in your story, in your POV, and knowing where other people are coming from with their feedback is also important. But I would say probably three or 4 years it took me to find a good writing group. Yeah, I've been in one for 8 or 9 years now. Yeah, it's been a solid group.
And maybe too, people that are too positive, is that also a detriment? Because you don't want yes people around you all the time. That happens in LA.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, you're a genius. This is the best thing I've ever read.
Right. Can I be part of it?
I think everything with film, you got to take with a grain of salt, one way or the other. The script is not going to be so bad, and it's not going to be the most perfect, amazing thing ever. But I think it's important to have people who you share your work with that will give you honest criticism, that won't just butter up your ego. I think getting honest criticism is part of the process to make things better. I think a director I work with always said, sometimes you shake the tree. He was talking about, because we were kind of getting into it over feedback. He was talking about, shaking the tree and the best fruit will sometimes fall. So we really, once we talked about that, and you realize, it's not really personal. You're trying to make this story the best it can be. And it doesn't necessarily have to be my idea all the time. It could be the director has a great idea. So I think that just figuring out what is the best for the story is the most important thing.
Now, you mentioned earlier that you are a history buff and that you studied history. What time period, if you could only write that time for the rest of your career, would it be?
Oh man, in college I was a big Napoleonic history buff, so I loved all that. I love all kinds of history. I feel like it's always changing. I was World War II for a while, World War I, studying the Civil War, studying the Cold War. There's so many different fun periods of history, and I think it's interesting to see, fresh movies that come out of those periods. I feel like there's always kind of a new spin on a Cold War spy movie. There's always some sort of spin on a World War II movie because it's timely. It's good versus evil in a lot of those situations that we can pull from. So. Sure.
What was it, The Good Shepherd? Did you see The Good Shepherd?
I saw it a while ago. That's this Matt Damon spy movie.
It's so great. Angelina Jolie.
Yeah.
Excellent film.
I just recently watched on a plane a movie called Spy Game, which slipped under the radar with Robert Redford and Brad Pitt.
Okay.
Cool movie. I don't know how I missed that one, but that was a cool movie.
Right. So you think back to the times when maybe you were a teenager, whenever, and would you see that movie advertised, and would I want to go see it? Would I spend my money to sit there for 2 hours? And that's who you're writing for?
Yeah, and I think even now, I try to go see as many movies out in theaters as possible. I think that's so important to just get out and still see movies versus just either streaming something or renting something. I love going to the movie theater. Yeah. So I'm always thinking of if I saw this trailer or this poster, I want to write something like that that's going to make me want to go see it on a Friday night. So I think that's who I'm writing for. It's just people who love going out to the movies, honestly. Yeah.
How do you approach writing a scene?
I always look at it as I want to make sure I have conflict, and I try to think about the character's goals for the story and moving the story forward. I want to make sure that every scene is moving the story forward in some way. Not a lot of I think sometimes when you read a new writer, there won't be a lot of conflict in the dialogue, and sometimes there'll be a lot of just kind of back and forth, and you start to wonder, where is this going? So when I'm trying to approach a scene, it's figuring out what does the character want, what is the goal of the scene, how do we move things forward, and then figuring out what is that conflict in that scene. And also I think with writing individual scenes, it's trying to figure out a fun spin on whatever you're doing. If you're setting, if you're in a small room, it's figuring out, is there something we can do here we haven't necessarily seen before? Can we use the environment in a fresh way? So I think those are the main things that I'm thinking about.
And when you are writing a scene, have you ever stopped yourself and said, you know what, this is going to cost too much money, we're going to need these types of cars or this type of environment, and it's probably going to make the budget?
Yeah, it was interesting because during COVID, I produced a horror film that I co-wrote. So that was an interesting part of it was, me wearing the writer hat and wearing the producer hat's very different, where we had to cut out, a couple kind of gnarly action horror elements out of it, just because it was a budgetary thing, it was a time thing. So I think that it's just figuring out what is the objective of your script. You know, if you're writing something that's going to be super fun, a big budget movie, an action film, I think go for it with those big action scenes, and hopefully you have someone working with you who can kind of tone it down a little bit. But I mean, it is good to keep in the back of your mind, don't have a plane crash. Always think about animals. Horses are expensive. Dogs are. Everything is expensive with animals, so that's a good thing to remember too. But yeah, I think in the back of my mind, a lot of times when I'm coming up with a story concept, it's figuring out oh, I think this has potential to be made, and it's not going to cost $100 million. So I think that's a fun part of screenwriting, is that element of trying to figure out how can this get made too.
Just going back to Hot Seat for a minute, when I watched the trailer, it seems like a very big film.
Yeah.
Were elements added later that made it bigger?
There's some, there's some special effects, there's some explosions, but man, James did a great job directing it, just keeping the pace so fast. Right. Cutting in and out of this room we're in, cutting out to the police officers outside, that made it feel a lot bigger than it was. That was a testament to him directing it. And also that was something we really had to keep in mind when we were writing it, was okay, we got a guy with his chair. He's working on a computer. He's doing some hacking stuff. But it's how can you keep that fun and fresh? Whether it's cutting to police outside, cutting to his family, cutting to something crazy going on at another location. But there's not that many locations in Hot Seat, but it definitely feels bigger than what we wrote.
Do you worry about scenes or the entire movie dragging, or do you worry about them being too fast?
I think for me, I'm always worried about things being too slow. So I like to, get out of the scene as quick as possible, get into a scene as late as possible. And then I think I'm always trying to just keep things moving, driving forward, keep the train rolling. But I think there are times when it's you need to take a minute, you need to take a break from doing the action scenes. You need to really emphasize the characters so we care about them. And if that means that we've had a crazy action scene, now we need to kind of slow it down. So I think it's just kind of getting that rhythm and that pacing. It's almost in some ways it's like music in that way, the pacing and the flow of a script. Because if there's so much action, people will tune out. So I think it's just finding those good breaks in between a scary moment or an action moment, and just reminding yourself to ground it in this character and this character's journey, and making us care about them.
Right, because I'm thinking The Bourne Identity, it slows down only when there's sentimental moments within the relationship.
Yeah.
And then maybe even with the girl with the dragon tattoo, it slows down when you kind of realize sort of a human moment for those characters.
I would say with the scripts that I've done, I feel like that's a similar pattern of slowing the pace down a little bit, making sure we still have those intimate moments with a character to learn about them, or to learn about if there's a love interest, to really kind of slow the pace down, reconnect with them before we hit the audience with something crazy again.
Does it bother you if something moves too slowly? Is it kind of even in your own I'm irritated by that. It's got to speed it up.
I think every film is so different. You go see a 3-hour epic in theaters that's this heavy drama. I mean, you kind of are expecting something a little bit slower to build. When it comes to action, for me, I like things to move fast. I love going to the movie and it's a tight 90 minutes. I love that. Doesn't need to be a 2.5-hour action movie. I like fast pace, but with my own writing, I think it's just trying to find that balance of we want to have a crazy horror sequence, but also balance that with the character thing. But for me, I'm honestly just trying to move it forward, keep the pages of the script turning, and keep people engaged as much as possible. Just because I feel like we have our cell phones, we have Instagram, we have all these apps that are so short attention wise.
Right.
So I think it's important to just keep things really flowing so people don't tune out.
Right, yeah, and I feel like they definitely have trained our brains
Oh, yeah,
to
for
change.
sure.
But there's something for me I love, like Oppenheimer or Tree of Life or something,
Yeah.
where it breathes on
Oh,
the
yeah.
screen. But do you feel restless during films like that? Or
No,
you like them?
I just recently saw The Brutalist, and that's that's a 3 hour plus movie. But I loved how they let things build in that. I loved exploring the characters, exploring the environments. I think it just depends on the type of film you're getting into. If it's more of a prestigious movie versus something that's a horror movie that takes place in a cabin. Like I feel like you want that to be fun and fresh and move. But no, I don't think I get too restless in movies. Unless I feel like a 90-minute movie can be extremely boring, and I feel like a 3 hour movie can be extremely exciting. I think that just comes down to the writing and the directing and getting us engaged. Because like I really enjoyed The Brutalist, and that was 3 hours, and I felt like I didn't look at my phone. There wasn't that kind of like, oh, how long is this? And then other movies, which I won't name, it's like, oh wow, 10 minutes in, you're like, oh wow, this is gonna be a long one.
Sure, sure. How do you handle writing room descriptions?
Room descriptions?
Yeah.
Man, I love I love the art of scene description in scripts, and there's so many writers who are so great at it. I just remember like when first moving to Los Angeles, reading Shane Black Lethal Weapon script, and he had so much voice to his characters, had so much voice to his descriptions, and with me, I try to keep things action line wise, one or two lines, and then keep it moving. So I'm pretty bare bones when it comes to just describing a location. I feel like I'll let the production designer kind of take that on, or the director, unless there's something really important in the scene. Then I'll get very detailed. But I try to let the production designer or the director and how they want to style the room, let them take that over. But I try to keep it very concise, probably 1 to 2 to 3 lines max on descriptions.
How does genre impact the descriptions that you write?
That's a great question. I think with horror writing, I think it's horror and thriller writing. I think it's trying to make the reader feel that creep and that dread. So sometimes with that, I think it's pacing things in the script, maybe a little bit slower. Maybe it is describing, the ambience of the room, or kind of building those creepy moments just to really set the mood. And I think with an action film, when you're writing fast-paced action scenes, I think it is about making the descriptions really kind of snappy, so the reader can kind of move through the page, and it is like an action film where you won't necessarily see something coming, and then they turn the page, it's like boom, So I think this genre does just define how you're writing something. With a Western, you wanted to be able to describe those big wide open spaces and let the reader really feel that. Yeah.
How do you incorporate visual elements or action into a screenplay?
Yeah, I think with me, it's in the script. I think it's making sure always thinking about someone reading it, making sure they're interested. So whether it's bolding something or putting caps on something to really drive their interest in there. And then I think with action, it's just making it fast read, making it fun to read. So with like the genre of action writing, like I don't necessarily want to read, a massive block of text like that when I'm describing a big action scene. So I try to keep it short, try to keep it moving. Yeah.
If you were interested in storytelling, you may also like our new book, Story Questions, the sponsor of today's video. It's a story tool that offers you over 1,500 story questions that you can use as story prompts. It's packed with over 40 categories, so whether you are in the brainstorming stages, developing characters, dialogue, or rewriting, it can help you at every stage of the writing process. Think about this statement. Most powerful stories are just great answers to strong questions. We've linked up to story questions in the information section below. Now back to the interview.
When you're writing your first draft, do you write it all the way through, or do you go back and tweak a scene here or a moment here?
With the first draft, this is a little bit what I mentioned earlier about perfectionism. Is like, if I like, I will start like, I'll write something and then I'll go back and edit it, and I'll find myself trying to edit. Like, I think every writer can relate to this, trying to get like every action line to be perfect on the page, and everything looks really great. But that can really slow your process down too. So for me, with a first draft, I think it's important to try to like have a really good outline, know where you're going, and try to really blast it out as fast as possible, and keep a lot of momentum in creating pages, whether it's daily or weekly, and get to the finish line. Get to the finish line of the script, set it down for a little bit, let it breathe, forget about some of it so you're not so close to it, and then, pick it back up a week or two later, or, get some feedback on it a week or two later, and then kind of figure out, okay, this is what's working, this is what's not, how can we attack these issues, and how can we come up with a new game plan on it? So I think that you write your outline for your first draft, but I think also, when you start getting feedback, it's important to almost have a new outline of how you're going to attack all these notes so you don't get overwhelmed with all that. Because sometimes there can be a lot of notes you'll get or feedback that'll take it a different way than you expected.
And what's your usual time frame, or maybe there's no usual time frame, but of churning out a first draft?
Like how long to write a first draft?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've done it from anywhere from a couple weeks to, if it's something that's, a really personal script that I'm not in a rush on, it can take me months. I think ideally you can finish a first draft in probably, 4, 5, 6 weeks. If you got a strong outline, I think that's a fair amount. But I've written them in a couple weeks. Yeah.
And do you have a regular time that you write, or no?
For me, when I started writing, it used to be like I was like a late night guy. I would be up all night writing, and then maybe, I don't know if it's getting older or wiser, but I don't stay up all night anymore doing that. I feel like you're just kind of wrecked the next day. For me, the best time for writing is, I feel like it changes for every writer, is I write the afternoons, morning, lunch, and then till the end of the day. And then I think, sometimes it'll be like that night, going back and looking at it, kind of editing it, and kind of knowing what you want to do the next day. I think that's another important thing, is like when you're writing a first draft, is keeping that momentum going, because it's so easy to get stuck on a script, is, having something that excites you to write next, like the next day to pick it back up. But yeah, I'm a morning, afternoon guy.
Collin, you said something about writing a second outline, and that might actually be different than the first outline that you wrote.
Yeah, I think like when if you get an executive to read your script, or you're getting some feedback from a writing group, and you're getting multiple opinions and notes about how to improve your script, I think it's so you don't get kind of overwhelmed with all these things. I think it's important to be able to take more of a bird's eye view on the story, and look at it almost like a architectural blueprint, and see like, okay, if I change this here, how's this going to affect my third act? So ideally, it's like, you get notes from people, or you get some feedback, and it's like taking a look at your outline and almost coming up with a new outline for the feedback and the notes and how you're going to change things. Because if you change something in the first act, it's going to recalibrate everything for the third act. So I think it's important to really re-outline when you dive into a rewrite, so you don't get lost in the whole process, and you start you get fixated on one scene or one note, and you're like, oh, I didn't think about how this is going to affect this scene 3 times down the road, So I think that having a good re-outline is important for attacking a rewrite.
Would you say you're organized?
Oh man, am I organized?
Not your sock drawer, but your screenplays and what your pages.
Yeah, I mean that's another skill in itself, is really being organized with your drafts, and when you're if you are sending it out to people, or you are getting feedback, making sure you got a good file system on your computer, making sure you got your drafts numbered and dated, so you can because sometimes you will just, hey, this didn't work, let's go back to this one. Or you'll write a rewrite, and somebody will read it like, okay, we like that you tried it, that's cool that you tried it, but we actually like what you did originally that made us like the script. So I think in that way it's important to be organized like that. And with the outlining, I think it goes back to when I started writing, not outlining a lot, and you can get 30 pages in, and then you'll start to get kind of cluttered. So I think that having a really concise, organized outline is important. I've tried to get better on it.
Just as a side note, though, you said you initially loved history.
Yep.
And you went to school. You were a history major,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
Where did screenwriting fall in line with being a history major?
I mean, it was always just a love of movies since I was a little kid, you know, whether it was action movies, blockbusters, horror movies. And I don't necessarily know the connection there between the history and the film stuff. I just realized after college, like, this is really what I want to give a shot. I want to make a real shot at trying to become a writer or, you know, working in film, producing things. So I think that was where that went. And then, you know, I would love to write a big historical epic. It just, that's another thing. It's like, you gotta kind of know what the film market is looking for sometimes, and that those movies are tougher to make a lot of times. For some reason, historical things sometimes scare people off right away, whether it's the costumes or the period piece element.
Horses,
tanks.
Right,
So
yeah.
I think, I mean, I love when there's a big historical epic. They're just I think a little bit harder to get made than something that you can contain, small cast, stuff like that.
right?
Yeah.
Is the ending of a screenplay something you know from the very beginning?
I like to have definitely a good general idea, but I find so many times the ending will get changed, whether it's from a producer's note or it's something that you didn't even think about when you're writing it, or it will just organically change. If in thinking about how you want the audience to leave the movie, if you want them to be on a high or a low, I think that's important. I mean, I don't quite remember, but I know we changed the hot seat ending a couple times. So I mean, I definitely try to have, because I feel like it's like it's almost like it's like driving through like the fog. If you don't have your ending in mind, you're kind of just driving, and you need that beacon through the fog. You know, you need that beacon to get to, and I think that's what having an ending will do for you. And also figuring out like how does your opening and your ending kind of tie in either visually or just thematically, I think is important too.
Would you say you're quite intuitive?
I think I'm pretty intuitive.
Yeah. Do you think that you can figure out what the audience might want versus, I know this is kind of a weird question, but when you're writing, maybe you're writing something for you, but then you go, you know what? I have a feeling the audience won't want this.
I mean, one thing is I've had a couple endings that I wrote that were kind of downer endings, and I feel like one of the first things you will hear from a producer or an executive is, can we not have such of a downer ending? So that's definitely one thing to think about. And then like, I try to think about like, when I'm leaving a movie, do I want to feel down, or I want to feel like happy and excited about how this thing ends? So I think that's kind of informed how I write, endings now.
Sure, but there's art films,
Oh,
and
yeah,
then
of course.
there's certain
Oh, of
cultures
course.
that they're more realist.
Oh yeah, of course.
And so a Pollyanna ending works for maybe American audiences, but not everybody wants to see that. But that is interesting though.
I mean, I think some of the most memorable endings are brutal endings in film history. There's so many movies that I personally love that have these brutal heart rip endings. I just find that sometimes for my stuff, unless it's horror, I mean, with horror movies, it's like, it's kind of nice to have that kind of gut punch ending. But with action movies, I feel like it's like, let's think about, is there a potential for something more out of this? Can we play more with this character? Can we play more with this world? But I mean, me personally, I love a good gut punch ending. I appreciate a director who's tough and relentless.
What do you consider your first big break as a screenwriter?
I think it was probably getting Hot Seat made. Before that, I think it was, placing well in a contest, a big screenwriting contest, getting some eyes on my project that way. I had a short film that was in a lot of contests, produced that. That was great. But I think as far as like career break wise, I think it was, getting Hot Seat made, or this Western Calamity Jane, getting that made. Those were all nice little things to keep pushing the ship forward. I mean, I haven't reached my big goal yet of getting, continuing to get some of my own projects made, but I think it's just like, appreciating the little wins along the way, whether it is, if you're doing short films, it's appreciating that, and then kind of working your way up and just appreciating every part of the process. But for me, I think Hot Seat's been a nice confident boost.
Yeah.
To see something of mine get made, to see something with really great prestigious actors, that's been nice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And do you realize it at the time, or does it take time to sink in, like, this is a milestone for me, and this is how the industry works?
Yeah. I think sometimes we forget that. Even like I said, where it's like if you place in a screenwriting contest, or you win a contest, or you get a short film made, everything in film, I think, is hard. Making movies is hard. Making good movies is even harder. I think that even even people who will criticize movies, no one starts out trying to make a bad movie. It's there's so many elements and so many variables that it's different when you create it, you put it on the page. There's so many things that have to happen. You have to get so lucky. And there's just so many elements. And I think that's one of the things to remember is like timing and luck play a big part in things.
Right.
With not even just film, just in life, I feel like. But sometimes it's not the right time for a film, and then years later, it'll get made. Things take just years sometimes. But I think it's really important for, speaking just as a writer, to appreciate those small wins and to remember like there is progress, even if it's small. It's kind of working towards something a little bit bigger.
Right. And there's a lot of opinions out there.
Oh,
Everyone
yeah.
has one.
Everybody's got an opinion, and you gotta be able to that's another thing I think is trusting your vision of a script. It's like finding a fine balance of trusting your vision, but also being open to criticism and feedback, and not being too precious with ideas. It's such a balance to find that. Because like you said, everybody's got an opinion, and they're gonna throw out their opinion at you, and it's a skill that you build, I think, and a little bit, like you said, intuition of kind of knowing like, oh, that might work. I could actually use that and make this better. Or it's like, that's your movie, or that's a different movie than what I'm doing. So I think just being comfortable in your POV is important.
Do you write a screenplay for you or for the screenplay to sell?
I'm always thinking of something that's going to get sold or made, for better or for worse. I mean, that might not happen. That might not happen, but the goal is to always make something that's going to be that people are going to want to see or want to produce. So I don't know if that's selfish or not, but once I had that concept, I mean, it's things that I want to see. It's fun characters that I want to exist in a room with. It's an action scene that I want to see. So I think it's a blend. But me personally, I mean, a lot of filmmakers are great at this. I'm not trying to make really small rip your heart out dramas or really, really personal things. I'm always trying to think of like, what is something someone's going to want to go see on a Friday night, or how can we escape all the news sometimes, or escape reality. I mean, that's always been an allure of film to me, is a little bit of escapism.
So not a mumblecore romance drama, yeah.
I'm probably not going to be the mumblecore guy.
Okay, but right. So because you said earlier you love watching a great sort of Friday night in the theater, popcorn in hand, and so you're envisioning who's another Collin that might want to see this. Yeah,
I'm envisioning that. But you know what? I'm working on this little horror thing right now that could be something that I could direct. That's not a big production. That is something that would be really, really contained. So I think it's just thinking of all levels. I mean, my goal is always just to create things, to share things, to get things made. So that's always in the back of my mind. Because while I might love a Napoleonic epic, there might only be one or two of those movies that get made. Ridley Scott kind of maybe checked that box on Napoleonic movies for a while. So it's just accepting that fact. That maybe these massive historical epics, it's like maybe my energy would be better coming up with a cool contained action movie. So I think it's just figuring out a balance.
Have you ever listened to another writer give you advice? Not a script consultant, not an author, not a teacher, but another writer who may not have even have sold a script, but have given you advice, whether you've asked for it or not, and you've taken it to heart?
Yeah, I mean, I'm so open to people's feedback and wisdom and creative ideas. I mean, you won't use all of them. Sometimes you won't use any of them, but man, I'm so open to people who have great ideas and want to share their POV on things. I think it's just you gotta remember, like, again, it's like it's your story, and just remember why you wrote it and why you're the one wanting to tell it. But yeah, I've had people who aren't writers give me ideas or throw something at me, and the best way is to just take it politely sometimes, even if it's not something you're ever going to use. Just be polite about it and make them feel good and make them feel like their idea or their note to you was worthy. I think that's an important skill too, is learning to take notes from people, and not really taking it to not really making it very personal, because I think that can happen too a lot. I think especially for newer writers, taking things very personal is tough with the process.
Right, and I was going to actually bring that up too. Is sometimes we can watch other people and see what not to do, and it's not in a judging way, but I guess it really is. But if you see someone who is too sensitive and just like, I'm done, I'm out, and we can learn from that as well. So
yeah, I mean, I've been in a writing group for several years, and I think it's important to find a good balance of people you trust and people who are going to be honest with you, but also people who care about you as a person, who care about you as a writer, and who have really constructive feedback. That's important. You don't want to surround yourself with people who are always going to have some nitpicky note or bring you down to the point where you don't want to write. I mean, that's another thing. It's like when you have a draft of your script and you start giving it out to people, like, make sure you're confident with that script, and make sure you're confident to take the criticism and feedback, because, going back to earlier, like talking about like, when is the script ready for you or not? It's like, sometimes I've shared things that, whether it's like, I'm just kind of still playing with the idea, or I'm still kind of cooking things up, and you get some really tough feedback on that. It's like, well, man, makes you reevaluate, and it kind of slows down your momentum. So I think just like being really confident in what you're putting out there and like trusting your process is important, before you start getting other people's opinions.
Well, you've also talked about you found a great core group, and that some didn't work and some did, and so I think that's important too, is knowing these are. I
tried out a couple different writing groups in Los Angeles, or I found them online, and it's like you would leave the group and you're like, oh man, I suck. It's like you don't want to feel that. You don't want to like leave with this like negative air over you. Right. And I just a lady in my writing group, she's having a lot of success right now. She just was the Nickel Fellow, and she, maybe 6 months, 8 months ago, she was getting feedback on the same script that was really like really bumming her out. And it just shows that everybody's got an opinion. It might not be the right opinion, It's the same script that they were so down on, and so many people love it. So I think it's just remembering being true to yourself and being true to your script,
That's a great example.
Yeah. I feel like there's so many of those, where somebody will get feedback and discourage them, and then it'll slow their whole writing process down. But I think it's I think it's when you start sharing your stuff with the world, you got to be prepared for people not to like it. You got to be prepared for bad reviews. They don't feel good. So I think and sometimes it's like, maybe it's like, I block that out or don't even read them. When it comes to like negative reviews and stuff like that. Like, because for me personally, I'm just speaking on my behalf. It's like that might throw off my creative flow. So you kind of got to get with screenwriting. I think you kind of got to get a little tunnel vision on your script. And you gotta see it through to the end, and then after that, maybe get feedback then.
Sure, and again, we talked about that earlier, but even then, I mean, now everyone's sort of a Monday morning quarterback, like an armchair sort of critic, and we can all get our message out there, and so we don't know what someone's agenda is when they're bashing it.
Absolutely. So we don't. You never know where somebody's coming from.
Right.
With anything. Yeah.
What screenwriting advice do you hold close to your heart?
I mean, for me, it's always starting with a great concept, trying to figure out something that feels fresh, that feels a little bit different, that feels like something I would want to see. That's important to me. The advice you'll get about conflict in a story is so important. To have characters, have good opposition. That's something I always got to keep in the back of my mind to remember. And then I think a little bit what we talked about with notes or the filmmaking process is being open to new ideas, being open to creative solutions, and also just remembering like a big part of screenwriting is troubleshooting. So I think that's kind of the big advice I've gotten to, is like a lot of this is putting together a puzzle. So just remembering that.
Would you say you're more linear in your thinking?
Yeah, I'm more linear. Yeah, I'm more linear when it comes to with story stuff. But I think I always like to, with me, I like to have. You don't want to overuse like flashbacks and jumping around too much like that. And again, I think it goes back to genre, right? Of things being a puzzle, because with Hot Seat, there is some twist elements, and there is a kind of a side character that we learn their story down the road. So I think that it is a little non-linear, but I think when you're starting out writing your outline, for me at least, I am pretty like beginning, middle, end linear, and then along the way figuring out how can we surprise the audience, how can we twist it, how can we surprise the character. Yeah.
And with conflict, if you're in a contained environment, how is that? Is it mostly the character has conflict with themselves? Or, I mean, you're adding, I don't want to give too much away about the Hot Seat, but.
I mean, I think it's like, you put two people in a room, what else can you put in there with them to add the conflict? Is it a secret that one of them has about the other person, Is it just two conflicting personalities, Is it one character has a goal and the other person is blocking that goal? So I think it's kind of that, finding that kind of back and forth conflict of dialogue, even if there's not a weapon in the room. It's using that kind of verbal weaponry against each other. And having a good villain to a character, it's always someone who knows their weaknesses. They know how to kind of pull that out. Yeah, and I think it's always like, giving the audience, don't throw it all out at a time. Like, let things build. Appreciate those moments. That was another note I got a long time ago that stuck with me, was like, sometimes it's like, it is good to slow the pace down and not get everything out there so fast. Like, let these moments build, let the anticipation build, let the thrilling elements build, and then when you pay it off, it'll feel better later.
And at some point, the protagonist is going to have some intel on their antagonist, and they'll know their Achilles heel.
Yeah.
And you can kind of play with that as well.
Yeah, I think it's about characters in a room, or in knowing each other's secrets, or learning new things about them. And then the audience kind of gets that aha moment when something new's kind of revealed, or a character even slips up. That's always fun, when a character lets out something they shouldn't. So I think there's so many different ways to kind of play with conflict with characters. If it's a poker game, maybe one guy's got a gun under the table. If it's a poker game, maybe one guy's got a secret on this guy, or the stakes are bigger for one character than another. There's just a lot of different ways you can up a scene. I feel like up the stakes.
If you are writing a story, you may be interested in our new book, the sponsor of today's video. After months of working on a story, have you ever said to yourself, I don't know what my main character wants. Why are my side characters more interesting than my main character? 17 Steps is a workbook-style tool with specific questions to help you dive deep into your main character and story. We've linked up to 17 steps below. Now, back to the video.
I'm curious how you would classify what a screenwriter does. Let's say you were invited to a holiday dinner and they say, Collin, what do you do? Well, I'm a screenwriter. Oh, what does a screenwriter do?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that encompasses. But I think at the heart of it, it's like you're the person who comes up with the nugget or the kernel of an idea for a movie. And then you take that and you try to you try to make a blueprint for everybody else. You try to make it something that's so exciting that people want to read it, that a director who can visually see it and turn it into something else. So I think it's like, being a screenwriter is somebody who starts out with the kernel of a creative idea and helps that thing grow. And, ideally it's like you're seeing it towards getting somebody else to buy into your product, to buy into the story. So I think that's what, a screenwriter does. It's just like starting from point A and just trying to figure out how to get to point Z. And then other times it's like job as screenwriter is rewriting something, or having a fresh take on something they might already have. Whether it's just an idea they have the rights to. I think it's somebody who can take that and bring their own vision to it.
And what does a screenwriter do all day? Or is it not a daily job? There are times when you're not actually
pound your head against the wall. I mean, I think it just depends. There's so many, I guess there's just so many different facets to screenwriting in this industry. I mean, I think it's like, ideally, it doesn't always happen. You're putting in pages like every day. You are moving the ball forward on new things every day. Sometimes it will be, having a general meeting, meeting an executive for a coffee. Sometimes it's going to a networking thing, meeting another writer, or being part of a writing group and having that regularly scheduled thing. But I think always it's like you always got to be creating new things. You've always got to be committed to creating new pages and pushing the ball forward always. But I think day to day it can change, especially when it comes to like production, because that's just such a different beast. Whether you're taking the feedback on set and changing it, or you're kind of wearing multiple hats on set, just trying to get this thing made.
And so with Hot Seat, there was what, like maybe several weeks where you were getting notes like, hey, can we change this real quick?
Yeah, I mean, it was like, hey, we have some big actors we'd like to go out to for this role. Can you guys beef this up really quickly? So it was like, okay, push everything else to the side. This is our focus. Like, this becomes priority number one. Let's see how we can get this back to them, but do the best job possible. And I think, when it's things are getting close to production, or it's going out to an actor, it's like you got to move that to your top priority to get this ready to send to them, because you never know when the opportunity is going to come again, and you never know how big or small a window is for someone to be excited and interested.
Yeah, and that goes into being easy to work with.
Yeah.
And that's so much in this industry.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think that's definitely a big part of someone who can get along with you. I mean, because it's like, a director and a writer or a producer, it's like you're going to be in contact with this person a lot, whether it's phone calls, Zooms, on set. It's like you want it to be somebody you like. So I think that is something that's a sometimes a forgotten element of like, it's important to be able to get along with people too, which is anything, right?
Right, and there are times when you will clash with someone, but then just keeping it professional, even though this is maybe not my chosen, this isn't someone I would want to go on a road trip with, but I can still make it work.
Yep, everyone's going to have varying levels of difficulty to them as you kind of work your way up. Whether it's a producer, whether it's an actor, I mean, everybody's going to have their feedback on your script. Everybody's going to have obviously their own personalities and their own views. So it's figuring out how to make that work, and like you said, making sure you stay professional, and not to take things, as a writer, not to take things super personally, because you just got to remember, everybody's coming at things from their own insecurities or their own POV or their own ego. So in an ideal world, it's like everybody's working together, remembering that the goal is to get this thing made. That's always the goal for me, is to just remember, okay, I don't want to be super precious with this. If this is what they want, let's try to get this thing made. Yeah.
Do you work on one script at a time, or do you have multiple screenplays going?
Yeah, I have multiple things at once. Yeah, I think in an ideal world, it's like you're working on a new script, you're rewriting something else, and you're kind of developing something else. I think it's important to have those things going at all times. And they use a little bit different parts of your brain, I feel like. You know, the editing, the rewriting, the editing process is a little bit different than the kind of the free flow of I'm trying to write this new draft, which is also different from the ideation stage. So I try to kind of have a couple things going at once, at least two. But also, you know, it's like sometimes when you're working on too many things, it can muddle it up. So I think it's good to try to blast out. Like I was saying earlier, it's important to like keep your forward momentum going on a new screenplay and finish that thing. You know, I feel like so many people can write a great 30 pages or a great 50 pages, but then it kind of meanders and falls off. So I think for everybody it's different, but yeah, I like to have a couple things going, and I'm always trying to come up with new log lines or concepts, you know, just to think about what's next.
And so when do you know when to put one away and start working on the other? Is it when you feel like you're at you can't really figure out a way out of a scene?
It's either like I'm blocked on the puzzle, so I might put it away for a little bit, or you know, it's like, okay, finish the script. You started, you know, showing some people, or you know, you're sharing with people. It's like, well, what else are you going to be working on? You can't. I mean, one of the biggest things, and you know, you asked me, lessons I've learned is, for me personally, it's like, I think a lot of younger writers, newer writers will focus on one thing, like their big idea or their big script, and they'll keep rewriting it, and they'll keep tweaking it, and they'll keep fine-tuning it, and they're not working on other things. So when they go to pitch it to somebody, it's like, what else do you got? Which will be, you're always going to get that question of what else do you have? And it's important to have a lot of different things. You know, one guy could be looking for a Western. One guy could be looking for a horror or a thriller. So it's good to have a lot of different things in your kind of arsenal. But I think that when you're early starting out writing, you're like, oh man, my first thing is going to be the one that gets made. You know, it's going to be this. The first thing I wrote was this Roman historical, like, bubonic plague had mutated into these zombies, and we turned it into a really cool short film. But it was like at a certain point, it's like, well, maybe this is not the one to get made for me. You know, I need to figure out what's next. So I think that was a big thing for me. It was like realizing, like, just try to be as prolific as possible and keep making, like, always have new ideas, you know?
Have you been on a lot of general meetings?
Yeah, I've been on, throughout the years, yeah, I've been on several, yeah.
And so people will ask you, you know, what else do you have aside from this?
Yeah, I think it's like with any meeting, it's like they might be looking for something, you know, they might be looking for a female-driven action movie, or you know, they like your writing style, which I think is a thing you'll find a lot. Is like somebody will read your script and like your writing style, and it might not be the movie for them. Like this Western might not be what they're looking for, but hey, do you have you got a low-budget horror movie? And if you got that might be just another avenue to get your movie to the next step, to get it made. So I think that's with general meetings, I feel like that's always going to come up. Is like, what else are you working on? What's new? What's exciting that you're working on? Yeah.
What's been the most challenging part of your career as a screenwriter?
Well, I think there's the challenges of the actual screenwriting process, which is on the page, and like I said, sometimes is a tough puzzle to figure out and can be frustrating on its own. But I think just the acceptance of, like, I've written something that I like, or I've written something I'm happy with, and I'm sharing it with people, but it might not ever get made. And you know, it might not be everybody's cup of tea. So I think kind of remembering that, you know. Yeah, I think that's been a big challenge, is just like, you write something you're super excited about, but it just might not connect with this industry. And maybe it's not meant to be a film. Maybe it's meant to be a short story. Maybe it's meant to be a graphic novel. There's so many ways we can put things. Maybe it's meant to be a YouTube video. There's so many ways we can put stuff out there, but I think it's just sometimes challenging and frustrating when it's like, you're either not getting the reaction you want, or things take so long to get made. The whole process takes a long time, and you know, there's ups and downs. Projects fall apart, they come back together. Like, luck plays a big factor. So I think it's just accepting those things, that you might be a good writer, you might be a solid writer, and you just might not get your movie made for a long time. Yeah.
And is that something that when you did make that sort of decision in your mind that, you know what, I think my direction is I want to be a screenwriter, I'm going to come out to LA, that you didn't realize how long things took, or you knew you were practical?
I think people tell you and you don't, I think people tell you and you don't always believe it, because there's so many there are so many stories of people having these overnight hits, which do happen. But I think a lot of times the overnight success actually took years, and we don't necessarily hear that part of the story. So I think in the beginning it's like, oh, like I was like, you spend a lot of time on your first script, you think it's gonna be the one that gets made. And people are like, no, you need to have a lot of scripts under your belt. I remember interning at a production company, and one of the guys was a manager there, and he's like, you need probably a good 10 scripts under your belt. And at the time I was like, wow, 10 scripts, I'm never gonna write 10 scripts. And then you think about it like down the road, you're like, that was pretty good advice, because, it takes you a while to learn the craft. It takes you a while to kind of learn your own voice. And, the more things you have, the more things you can fit into this box of what they're looking for. So, I think that's important.
And maybe, I think you talked about it like maybe being like a muscle, just knowing like if you get feedback and it's not necessarily positive, to not just let it, you're not going to be like on the couch for 3 days, not leaving the house depressed, or hopefully not.
Yeah,
but
at least for me. I mean, man, I've had some definitely like, am I doing the right thing? Like I've had some depression from writing. I mean, I remember an early script. You read in the trades that a similar thing has come out. And that happens so many times, especially with people who do like a lot of historical stuff or adapting things. It's like somebody else made the same thing, so that's always pretty soul crushing when you find out there is a similar script or a similar project out there, because that's just part of it. That's part of the zeitgeist,
right?
Or there's unique ideas, like incredibly unique ideas that no one's ever thought of, are very hard. So there is probably going to be something similar out there. So those ways are soul crushing. But again, that's just it's just a tough industry, and you just got to accept a lot of these things, that you're not going to get every project made, that things are going to fall apart, and that's all part of it. Yeah, that's all part of the journey, unfortunately.
Yeah, maybe each one hurts a little less, and then you can just kind of rebound faster.
Yeah,
it's kind of like a muscle.
It's like building up a little bit of a
bicep,
or a thicker skin.
Right.
And with the whole, the way of looking at it like a muscle, I think that's for a lot of things with screenwriting. I mean, I think it was Jerry Seinfeld who had like a calendar where he checked an X on every day he wrote, just to keep that momentum going. And I think like the more you write, the more you stay in the groove, the more things are going to flow, and you're going to be better at it. You're going to get better at it. The more, it's like you said, working your biceps, they're going to get bigger. The more you write, the more scripts you read, the more scenes you work on making better, the more conflict you can figure out, you're going to get better. Yeah.
What are some key skills you think that every screenwriter should have?
Key skills.
Besides being able to type.
Besides being able to, patience, troubleshooting. Because scripts are sometimes like a puzzle, figuring that out. A skill that I think we don't always think about, but we definitely need, is to be, as tough as it can be sometimes, it's to put ourselves out there and try to be outgoing. Meeting people. It's definitely an industry where it's important to meet people, and network, even though it can be painful to us as writers and being sometimes more introverted. That's something we definitely have to work on, whether it's it's putting on a little bit of a mask and putting on that fake armor that we are confident. I think those are all good skills to have. But patience, I think, is an important one. And being open to feedback, I think, is important. Yeah.
And just like we talked about earlier, that you learn to kind of how to maybe categorize the notes. And
I think when it comes to the actual craft of screenwriting, reading scripts that have gotten made is important. Reading scripts that sold on the market, to kind of and familiarizing yourself with how the scripts look on the page, the voice of the writer, how they attack the dialogue, how they do their scene descriptions. I think just having an open mind to learning and to getting better is really important with writing. because there's so many little ways we can get better, or we can always be learning from somebody. Whether it's a film that got made or something that's similar to yours, like how did they do this? So I think that having an open mind is a really important thing too.
What has motivated you to submit to screenwriting competitions in the past?
I think it was another way to get potential eyes on your script. If you place in a contest, it's just another little small thing to say that, if you're sending somebody an email, hey, this script was a semifinalist. Hey, this script was a finalist. It's just more ways to add to your script to get people to look at it, honestly. Sometimes contests will have, feedback for your script that you can get. So I think it's just another avenue to try to get eyes on your screenplay.
When you were submitting to competitions, did you have those particular competitions in mind while you were writing your script?
No, I think there's like several contests that are kind of known as the big ones, and then you'll find something that's more specific, like if it's for an action screenplay. I don't really think of that stuff until the script is done, and then that becomes another avenue, another door to potentially open contests. I think whether it's a contest to open a door or pitching to somebody online, I always just think of it's more doors to try to open. I think that's what contests will give you, just another way to get eyes on your screenplay, and also have some sort of evaluation of how don't take it to heart, but if it is moving forward in contests and stuff, you have something.
And they can be a way to get meetings as well.
Oh yeah, some of the major contests, if you place in those or you advance in those, I think a lot of managers look at those things. Executives, I've had some friends who won contests and they got meetings with managers, agents, and that's how they kind of got in the game, especially the contests like the Nickel, that's kind of a career changer. Yeah.
In competitions, what do you think it is that sets the winning scripts apart?
Man, I have no idea. I think it just depends on the reader you get sometimes, unfortunately. That's another variable. It's just like, who knows who's reading your script sometimes. But I think, honestly, having really great characters, that people can connect with emotionally, I think is important for contests. I think that's the big one, is having really great characters that people really just connect with in certain ways. Sometimes I think, if you're doing an action contest, obviously having a great concept is king, but I think for some of these really prestigious contests, it's having really great characters and a really interesting story.
How many contests would you say you've entered?
I think I've done them all at some point. I haven't since I got representation. I haven't really been going down the contest route, but I think I've submitted to most of the big contests over the years in some way. I would say numerous contests.
And can you submit the same screenplay, or it has to be a brand new one to each contest?
I think you can submit the same screenplay, or maybe just change the title on that thing and resubmit it. But I think you can kind of submit it. I know I've had friends who've submitted contests from one year to the next in the same contest, and they've advanced. They've advanced the year later after they made some changes and incorporated that feedback.
How would you decide what screenplay competitions to enter?
I think there's several that are known to affect careers a little bit more in certain ways. So those are the big ones. Austin Film Festival is a big one. I think you kind of hear from word of mouth, those type of things. Or even using a resource like, YouTube or Reddit, people talk about their success stories, and hearing other writers' opinions on them, I think, is important. Those are always the big things in my mind, and especially sometimes just a script is catered towards a horror screenplay competition or an action screenplay competition. I'm like, oh well, I'm a genre guy. This might fit right into that, so I would go down those routes.
What kind of feedback have you received from these competitions, and how has it helped your writing?
I think with those, I think some of the contests you'll get a general round of notes on your screenplay. So I think with anything, it's a take it or leave it thing. But I think there's it's like what we talked about. Even people who aren't writers, but they'll still give you something. There's always something to be pulled and gained from everything. If you disagree with it, okay, but maybe there is something in your script that's not working. So I think each time it's like, no matter what contest you're in, I think you can get some good feedback and figure out how to make it get to the next level.
Have you ever had a screenplay underperform with competitions, but it was actually successful with producers? In other words,
Yeah.
you submitted it to a screenplay contest,
I think
nothing happened, but producers liked it.
I think Hot Seat might be a perfect example of that.
Oh, really? Okay.
I don't. Sometimes I think the genre stuff is, it's better to go to producers with those things. You never know what's going to connect with a reader. Sometimes you never know if a script is gonna connect. But yeah, I don't think even if it doesn't place in a contest, that doesn't discourage me. I think another skill is like just accepting the answer is going to be no, and accepting that everyone's going to have feedback or criticism. And if that's like your starting point, anything else is a little success along the way. It's like, I don't get deterred real easy. So if I don't place in a contest, it's like, well, that door didn't open, but we're not going to stop. We're going to keep going. So I think that's important to remember too.
I like that. Yeah, that is a great sort of mantra to have in any part of whether it's acting or screenwriting, whatever. It's probably going to be no, and there's probably going to be criticism. And
I think that's such a big part of acting and writing is like you put what you have out there, and you just gotta be confident in your vision, and you gotta be confident like, I'm just gonna keep pushing this thing. I'm gonna keep trying to open doors. I'm gonna keep working, and you gotta sometimes just like screw the negativity, and realize that no is just a part of the game.
Right.
It's just a part of the game.
Collin, will you still submit to screenwriting competitions today?
Not as much now that I have representation, and I do have some produced credits. I think that's like, I think if you place in a competition, I think those are great things to say like in an email, like, hey, I won this competition, I placed in this competition. Now I think it's like, I've had a couple things made, so I can almost use those as kind of like my opening, whether it's an email or opening, just conversating with somebody. But for the big ones, I might still submit to a big contest if I feel like I have something that really fits that, or if it's like if it's like a cool contest that's attached to a film festival. Those are always awesome to go to. I went to Austin a couple years ago, and you always meet writers, you meet friends of those things. So there's a lot to be gained from contests still, I think. Yeah.
Any final thoughts that you have on writers submitting to screenplay competitions?
I think go for it. If you can afford it, and you have the money to pay the submission fees, go for it. It doesn't hurt anything. Like as long as you know you might not win, or you might not place, or anything might come of it, but remembering that it is a possible another opportunity. Sometimes a lot of these contests have really good notes that you get. So, in that way, your submission fee gets you feedback to help you get to the next level. So I would say go for it. I think screenplay competitions are a great avenue. I think also making things is a great avenue. Making short films, that's so important too. It's just trying to make things.
And if money is not something, especially during leaner times, to be able to submit to, it can add up. They can get costly.
Oh yeah, they can get. Submitting short films to contests gets expensive. Submitting screenplays, it all adds up. So I think it's just being able to pick and choose based on your budget. And if you don't have the money and the resources, join a writing group, get feedback that way, or try to you could send your logline to people, an email query. There's so many different avenues. Go to a networking event. There's a lot of different avenues where you're not paying upfront money. So I think it's just I think it's like with submitting things, it's like just knowing your budget and knowing, hey, this is what I can do here. Let's pick the right contest for me.
Sure. And if someone doesn't have a budget, if they can't, well, where do you find these networking groups? Like Eventbrite and things like that? I mean,
that's been one. Sometimes they'll be on like Reddit. I think just look around on the internet. I think there'll be good resources. Whether it's Reddit, I think is a good resource. A screenwriting forum there.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of organizations that have mixers in Los Angeles. I think Eventbrite might have some mixers and stuff, but I think it's just taking the time to search out those things too.
Right, Craigslist too.
Craigslist, maybe Craigslist,
Yeah.
maybe not.
So there's actually some good stuff on there, but
Oh no, I mean, I remember. I've found so many great people for stuff I've produced just off Craigslist.
Yeah,
there's so many great. I mean,
it's a great resource.
I've gotten writing gigs off of Craigslist. It is a great resource. I haven't used it in a minute, but it is a great resource for finding talented people.
Right. Yeah. There's there can be some scary stuff, and then there can be some amazing finds on there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then lastly, with writing groups, is there a fee to be part of it, or no? Do you bring snacks as part of popcorn or what?
There's no fee with the writing group I've been a part of, and writing groups that I know there's no fee. There are some online that do have a fee where maybe a more established writer will run the group, make sure everybody's getting equal time or getting equal feedback. But I think it's either just organize one on Zoom or get together and bring snacks.
Right.
Yeah. So I wouldn't pay for one. There's so many great ones out there. But sometimes having somebody to just really run and organize it is what there might be a small fee for.
Do you have a preferred place in LA where you write? If you weren't at home writing,
I love to go to like Mel's Diner, or I love to go to Bob's Big Boy in Burbank.
Nice.
That's where David Lynch wrote for a long time. For some reason, me and my co-writer wrote Hot Seat at a diner. We've written other things at diners.
I love diners
For some reason, diners are fun. There's a good energy. For me, I also love going to like old libraries. Like the old, like just the UCLA library. I like those very kind of old school libraries where you can kind of find a nice little corner, just tuck yourself away. There's not a lot of distractions. Anywhere where you can shut your phone off for a while and get in the zone, I think is great. But for me, I love diners. Some people love coffee shops. I love a good diner or a good old library.
Right. Remember, there was a place called Dupar's too that was very had not an 80s feel, but there's something about diners.
Is that a diner?
Yeah, it's no longer.
Okay.
Just that diner feel.
Yeah, there's something about that. Like what,
Denny's.
I don't know what it is, but there's something creative about that. Getting a milkshake or just hanging out for a while, getting coffee.
Right, yeah, and there's something too if the uniforms are kind of, if there's like a hairnet in the place. I don't know.
We might have to deep dive the science of diner writing.
There's just something great about it. Yeah, sorry. No, I love that. I love that. How has producing helped your screenwriting?
I think tremendously. I think knowing what it takes to make a film is important, and I think when we haven't gone through that process, sometimes we'll write these crazy big budget things, which is fun sometimes, but it's also like we mentioned earlier, maybe you won't want to have horses when you realize how many things go into getting a horse on set, having a trainer there. So I think producing has definitely helped my writing, and if you're writing something to try to make it yourself, or you're writing something that is maybe going to be low budget, I think knowing how to produce things is important. Knowing how to get good talent, good people who want to help you but not spend a lot of money. Knowing how to look for locations that aren't going to be a ton of money. I mean, I think producing something is super, super, super vital and important to people who want to create stuff. And make it on their own. I think it's such a skill to have. And also just when you're on set, the reality is you're gonna have to cut things. You're gonna have to change things. And just accepting that and figuring out as a writer, how am I gonna make this work? We cut this, but can we do something cheaper? Can we do something in a room versus with a car, So I think I think producing is very, very valuable. Yeah.
How does it normally work for you to go from screenwriting to producing?
With a couple of the things, I've just been fortunate to be able to raise the money or, know an investor who wants to support something, and I've been able to produce it on my own. So I think it's just that shift of like, okay, now this is the script, but now I got to wear a different hat. Of like, I got to get this thing made. There's a budget, It's like I can't do all the crazy stuff in the script anymore. Like I gotta be able to shift gears. And then I think it's like, if you're able to produce things, it's just more opportunities for you. Meeting people, getting more projects out there, building up your credits. I think is important. It's just another avenue, I think, of expanding your filmmaking.
What has been one of the hardest aspects of producing for you? I would imagine, I guess, raising money, or no?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's always the big elusive thing, right? And the question mark for is like, how do we get money for this? How do you find investors? How do you drum up interest for something? So I think that is tough. The onset stuff, it's its own obstacles. And then I think after the film is done, I think people sometimes underestimate the post-production process, what goes into that, how expensive that can be, how long that can be, and how many steps are that. And then you get to the other element of trying to find distribution, trying to find a home for a film, Yeah, I mean that's a whole other thing, and I think each time you produce something, you learn something new. Whether you're producing short films, you're going to learn so many things, and then working your way up, you're always going to learn new things, and there's always going to be new obstacles. So yeah, like during COVID, this horror film I produced, This Land, learned so many things, and just trying to find an audience for that and get that out there is a tough obstacle too.
We don't normally hear about screenwriters going out raising money. How did this happen for you? How did this turn of events come to be?
I had some business contacts, and I had some just finding the right investor who really believes in it and wants to make a film. I mean, you never necessarily know who wants to be involved in a project. Sometimes it's like taking a chance on yourself. If you have some of your own personal investments, putting that towards a film. I mean, I've done that. There's so many different ways, but it is tough. I mean, that's a tough part is trying to find money and trying to find people who want to buy into your project.
Right, especially because it's not like putting it in a T-bill where you're going to get this much back.
There's definitely no guarantees in film. But I think it's having people who want to be excited and want to be a part of something and produce and knowing what their goals are too. I mean, they probably want to invest and they want to make something else after this and continue down the line.
What was the last movie that you raised money for, and are you able to tell us how you did this?
The last one that I produced was the horror film during COVID, and that was having an investor who was interested, them putting some of the money up, and then honestly on that one I sold some of my own investments, put some of my own money into it, which people will advise you not to do. Don't put your own money into things, which is good advice, but sometimes it's what you got to do. And then other things producing, I think it's almost like the stock market, where you're investing in something. There might be an opportunity for you to get involved with a certain project if they're trying to raise a certain amount of money. But the one that I would specifically would be my horror film that I produced. Yeah.
And now with these, without having to name who the people are, but are you frequenting their business? Like, how did you meet? How does one meet a potential investor? Especially because oftentimes people that have money, they're on guard, rightfully so.
Yeah.
From LA people.
I think that's part of the mystery too, and I think that's connecting with other producers or connecting with a manager or an agent who might have more of a pool of resources they can go to, or they might have, they might have their own connections finance-wise, whether it's a producer who's got a connection with a financier or a manager who knows those things. With a script I optioned a long time ago, it was a production company had some good relationships with some finance companies and financiers. So it was just literally having a list of the ones they had contacts with and sending the script out to those and seeing if they might be interested. And I think there's just so many, if you get a talented actor or an actress, that might bring interest, that might bring a certain amount of money to a project.
Absolutely.
And as far as meeting people, that's its own thing. I think just always networking. You never know what doors are going to open. I met my one of my best friends and a filmmaker that I work with a lot. I met him at a pitching a script idea. They liked it a lot. The production company they were at the time optioned it, and we stayed in touch since then. One of my long-term directors who I work with, we just started as friends, and just kind of working your way up with people.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't have a great answer for finding
No,
for hunting down the
realize.
money.
No.
I wish I did.
Okay. It's a hard question to answer, and I get it. You have to kind of build a body of work, and
Yeah.
people have to see that you're reliable.
Yeah.
You can't just
Yeah.
go to someone brand new with 5 shorts under your belt and say, you're going to love this idea, and can I have $1 million? So maybe you can. I
Ideally
don't
that
know.
would work out, right? I mean, there's
Right.
one of those every year, that short film that really connects and people really connect with it, and that career takes off. That just hasn't been my personal experience.
Right. And when you have used your own money, is there something that you tell yourself, like, I may never see this again,
Yes.
and I'm okay with that?
Yes, it's that.
Yeah.
It's that. Like you were saying, it's like it's not like you're not buying into a bond, or you're not buying into a stock market. Rough right now, but overall, you're not buying into something that might give you a percentage over time. It's a lot of risk. So I think it's accepting that, and I think it's accepting if you've got even just a little bit of money. Like, how do you make that work? Can you make a short film for no money? I mean, people do it all the time. It's hey, we got a house, we got a location. What can we shoot here for no amount of money? So that's part of the fun of filmmaking too, is just trying to be creative when there's not always a lot of money for certain things. But if you are going to invest your own money, I think it's accepting the risk. I think it's having a goal of this is what I want this project to do for me and for my career. So I think it's just trade-offs of anything you invest in with money. Yeah, just trying to think about what will this do for my career. Where will this take me? Yeah.
Right. And again, building sort of a body of work
Yeah.
where people
Yeah.
that may have the money can trust you. So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have some director buddies who, they've got some financiers and just building a body of work with those guys where it's, we've made one thing, okay, now we can do something a little bit bigger, So I think it's just, it's like you said, building a body of work.
Right. What are some of the questions an investor may ask you as a filmmaker, screenwriter?
Man, I think it's like, where do you think this is, what is the market for this? I think is important. If as a writer you can get some attachments, whether it's an actor or an actress, or you have a producer on board, I think knowing whether it's pre-sales for a project that we might be able to get this for having this name attached, this actor will bring X amount of money. I think they want to know that. I think they want to know you as a person and as a writer and as a producer, and if you can be able to get along. And I think they want to know your vision for a project. I think it's, when you bring a director on too, that's important to know, they're going to have their own vision. But I think an investor wants to know what you want to do with the project, where are we going with this, and what's my potential return.
Right. And some people invest in films as a write-off. So that's something that
Absolutely. Yeah, that's another thing, right? Yeah.
Right. So yeah.
Yeah. Any way you can get it sometimes, I feel like with film investing, there's so many different avenues.
What would you say to screenwriters who don't want to produce? I'm just a writer,
Yeah.
that's all I do. I don't want to get involved with money, locations.
Yeah, I think I think just owning that, like I think just owning that. I mean, my old co-writer, he doesn't do the producing side, and that's fine. He's happy just writing. Yeah, I think just accepting that, like this is not my forte. I mean, I think the more you can do, the more doors you're going to open. I think trying it out can never hurt. You know, I think it's sometimes as writers we can get in a little bit of a bubble. We can get in our own little creative bubble where we're making these things and not getting them out there to the world. So I think it is important to be able to try to wear multiple hats, even if it's small things. But just being a writer, I mean, a lot of people find success just doing that. So I think it's just owning that. Like, I'm a writer. This is what I do. Somebody else is a producer. These are my skill sets. These are their skill sets. So, yeah, I think like looking at our skill set and trying to figure out like what are we best at is important, you know, because it's a totally different skill set trying to produce a movie than just writing it.
We talked about you played sports a little bit growing up, so that probably helps to get into that mindset of you have to get out there and be on a team. Yeah,
it is interesting because writing, I think, is such an insular process and sometimes an isolating process. And me personally, that's something that I've struggled with, and that's why I've had co-writers in the past, or I've had a writing group that I'll get feedback from to kind of make it so it's not just yourself. And I think that is important to remember, like, because writing can be very isolating when you're in a room, when you're dialed in on a script. Just remember there's a lot more, there's a lot more things out there of meeting other writers, meeting producers, meeting executives. So I think that's important. And yeah, the team element aspect I think is big because like that's always my goal. It's like we all have egos, right? We all have things we want, but like remembering like the goal is to make creative things that are gonna affect people or make people feel things or have fun on a Friday night. So I think that's where the team element comes into play. With the producing, like back to like producing, I think like building a good team for your film is so important because any one of the areas, whether it's sound design or production design or costumes that are lacking, it's going to bring the whole thing down. So I think it's like just trying to find a good team that works well together is so important in film.
Were you an only child?
No, I have an older brother. He's 15 years older. So in some ways, I was an only child in some ways. But yeah, he's 15 years older.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering, did you spend a lot of time alone, watching movies, thinking?
I think I've always had that like creative in my head side.
Right.
And always have loved movies since I was a little kid. Always loved movies. And I think with like writing now, it's always like just you watch something like how can I turn this idea into something else? I think it's having a mindset of wanting to try new things and create new things.
Right, and knowing that when we were kids, maybe we could entertain ourselves. We didn't need constant,
Yeah, I mean, film has always been something that I've gone to for my own personal enjoyment, for fun, escapism. I think there's a part of escapism in the film industry. There's definitely a part of escapism in screenwriting. You go into this fantasy world and you're creating characters and worlds, which is it's the allure of it, the fun of it. You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's also important to remember. Like, there's so many things where there's the contest or the feedback or all those things. It is important in the beginning to like make sure you're like excited about this world you're creating and remember that. Remember I'm creating this world, I'm creating these characters, and to have fun and play with that. Because all the rejections are going to come later. So at that point, you might as well enjoy the ride in some ways.
What was your favorite movie as a kid?
Oh man, there's so many. I love Alien and I love Aliens. Sometimes I like the second one better. I really love Gladiator. Always love Gladiator. I love those big kind of epics like that.
Right.
For some reason as a kid I saw this movie in theaters 3 times, LA Confidential.
Okay.
Great crime movie.
Right.
Love that movie. It's always great for a rewatch. Those would be some of my favorites, yeah.
Right. And so did you go to the Cineplex in your local
yeah.
town?
I mean, I loved going to just like the video store. Just the
Right.
video store. When I was a kid, it was VHS and then DVDs. Going to Blockbuster. I always loved going to Amoeba Records. They have so many movies, and just being that something you can talk about with people. You know, you can talk. Hey, you seen this lately? It's just a fun thing to always chat about, and meet other film buffs is always fun.
Right. And the library actually has a lot of great.
You know what? I just because I like to go to. I hadn't in a minute written in the library, and I was recently at one. I'm like, I forgot. You can get any movie you want here. You know, it's such a good avenue for screenwriting books, finding scripts at a library, and also just finding any movie you want.
Right.
Whether it's a foreign film because some of that stuff's not on streaming.
True.
Yeah.
And they have the Canopy app too.
Yeah, I haven't used that one. I used to go to that. There's a video store on Santa Monica called Cinephile Video. They have it's like sorted by genre, it's sorted by director. It's so fun.
Oh, wow.
You can kind of get lost in there for hours.
Yeah, they had Odyssey Video back in the day in North Hollywood.
Okay, yeah.
And that was the
one.
That was a good one too. Yeah, that was maybe before it was NoHo. I'm not sure, but